Here are just a few of the reasons why kids love Y Camp. The YMCA camp is for boys. The YMCA camp is for girls. The Y even has a camp for equestrians, or kids who just love to ride horses. Part of the reason kids love Y Camp so much could be the instructors. The YMCA has a trained staff that knows the right way to have a good time. And there's even a professional chef who knows how to cook a really great meal. Kids can enroll in day camp or resident camp a week at a time or longer. But no matter how long they stay, they'll be sure to have more fun than they'd have in a week of Saturdays. When it comes to having a good time, kids know the reason. Now you know the why.
Star Search 85, Sunday at 11 p.m.
It's time now to visit the wonderful world of the great outdoors with the Southern Sportsman, Frank White. Today's show is brought to you in part by House Autry, proven cornmeal and flour products. By Happy Jack, manufacturer of the all-new 3X flea collar. By Overton's, the world's largest water sports dealer. And by the Southern Sportsman Game and Seafood Restaurant, the best foods from the field and the ocean.
Today we will go fishing in Summersville Lake, West Virginia, fish the Ohio River for white perch, and cook breakfast trout Parmesan in the kitchen. This is a real good little meal that you can whip up, particularly for brunch. Now, I can eat it for breakfast and I can eat it for dinner at night. I like it very much. I've cooked it here on the show with bluefish, but it's been some time, a good many seasons back, and some of my favorite recipes, I don't think it hurts to repeat them once in a while, and I wanted to do this one again because, as I say, it is one of my favorites. It takes a few minutes to do it. It's going to be kind of ongoing. I'm going to complete it during the show today, but I'm going to get it started here right now. Now, however many people you're going to serve, I'm going to serve 1 egg and some asparagus and a fish fillet for each person when we get through. I like to use these things, these broiler things like we have at the restaurant. This is where I got this one, but I have some at home. And it comes out of the holder. The holder doesn't go into the oven. You don't want to cook that because it's a plastic. But you cook on this, then you put it into this, and it's hot, and you bring it to the table hot like that and serve it out of this particular plate. And that's what I'm going to do now. So here we go. I've got my fillet of fish up here, and I take some butter and rub it into the bottom of the plate like this. And I've got some Parmesan cheese, grated Parmesan. Fresh grated is better. I just grabbed my spaghetti sprinkling thing that I had at home there to show you today. But at home, if I've got friends and I'm going to be real, sure enough, fancy with them, I'll grate a chunk of cheese, but just sprinkle the plate with the Parmesan and put the fillet up here on the side like this. I'll salt and pepper it very lightly for seasoning and put just a little butter. Now the oven is set on 400 degrees and I'm going to cook this about 10 minutes, something like that. Dot it with just a little butter, and I'll cook it 10 minutes, then I'll come back and go on with the egg and the asparagus and everything. And this is going to end up with everything on one dish by the time I get through with it. But there we are. And that goes into the oven. And we look at it in 10 minutes. In the meantime, I've got a couple of fishing trips in West Virginia that I want to show you, and I'm going to do that in just a minute after these very important messages.
The following announcement is for honorably discharged U.S. veterans age 18 to 59. The toll-free number shown on your screen is used to respond to the following. Do not miss this important information exclusively for veterans. Veterans of all branches of service and spouses of qualified veterans, stand by for complete details.
Already over 2 million veterans have called to find out how this card can serve them exclusively. Hi, I'm Don Shula. If you're a veteran age 18 to 59 or the spouse or widow of a vet, write down this toll-free number because one quick phone call can bring you all the facts about a plan that offers you a choice of 10, 20, up to $50,000 of term life benefits. $50,000 for under $10 a month. Since your spouse is also eligible, your total family protection can reach up to $100,000. All this at affordable veterans rates. And with term insurance, you get the best value for your money. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call. Operators are ready now to serve you. In a matter of days, an information package will be sent directly to your home. In it, you'll find all you need to apply right away. In fact, you don't even have to take a medical exam. You'll also receive your own Veterans Life card embossed with your name. It's all absolutely free with no obligation. As a veteran, you owe it to yourself to get the facts about this important offer. So call now.
Veterans call 1-800-228-5333. 1-800-228-5333. Call now. You will also receive an updated guide to veterans benefits showing what government benefits veterans are entitled to and how to collect. Operators are standing by. Call 1-800-228-5333.
When I make my swings out through the Southern Sportsman territory, I try to go out and stay out if I can, at least a week and a half is better. I come in every 2 weeks to Raleigh and produce 2 shows, and then that gives me 2 weeks that I can hit the road again. And that way I can go out and get several stories and not be wasting a lot of time traveling back and forth. A few weeks back, in fact back in March, I went up to West Virginia and shot several stories up there. If you've been watching regularly, and I hope you have, then you already saw the Sutton Lake story that we did up there on the Kentucky spotted bass. And during that same trip, took some film. We fished what I think is one of the prettiest lakes in the country. Now, it's a kind of a bizarre, it's a weird sort of a lake, Lake Summersville. It's the largest impoundment in West Virginia, and it's a flood control project. They've dammed up the Gauley River Canyon. There's no power plant there. They don't generate the electricity, but they hold the water back and they meter it down the Gauley River and into the Kanawha River so that the barge traffic, the tugboats and the ships that come up the Ohio River and then into the Kanawha River all the way up to Charleston and all the industries and everything up there, bringing back and forth the supplies and so forth. They use that as a reservoir to maintain a navigational channel in the rivers down below. Consequently, they let it fill up in the spring and they hold it during the summer, and then during the wintertime when there's not so much rain, they use that water for navigation. And when you go there in the spring, the very early spring, like I'm going to take you there right now, you might find the water, as you're going to see it now, down about 90 feet. This looks like some sort of a western lake out in Utah or Nevada or somewhere like that. It is so far down to the water that when they built this ramp, halfway down it, they built a turnaround place so that you wouldn't have to back your boat something like 500 yards all the way down to the water. You can drive down there about halfway, and there's a little turnaround, as you can see, that little paved area there. But this is Summersville Lake. But it's, to me, it is, I think, a very beautiful lake, no matter whether it's full of water, and I've seen it that way, or whether it's empty. Now, they'll start holding the water back, and as soon as they get some water up there, and they'll start filling it up. And by the end of summer, you won't be able to see any of this. This will all be underwater. And then next spring, you'll be able to see it again. But you see how far they drove down there to turn around and back the car in. Now, there are 3 boatloads of us that are going fishing today. Rick Heim and Mac McCoy are friends from up at Fairmont, and of course my buddy, Denzel Courtney, a biologist with the Department of Natural Resources, is going to be along, and a couple other guys from Natural Resources. This guy in the checkered shirt is Bernie Dowler, and he's in charge of, he's the chief of the warm water fisheries up there. And with him was Bob Ross, who's the federal coordinator with the Department of Natural Resources in West Virginia. And these guys all left to fish. Mac McCoy, you'll see, this is Denzel Courtney here. And we went out, and right away Denzel hit a walleye, and I thought, my goodness, we're going to fill the boat up here in about 10 minutes. But as sometimes happens in the spring, and particularly when it's a little cold, and you can see we dressed for the cold here, Oh, I don't know what happened. Well, that one just woke up and yawned, and the lure fell in his mouth. But we found out for the rest of the day that even though we caught fish, we had to work for them. And that's the best way anyway. It's really not any fun to go fishing and you catch one every cast. After you've caught about 30, you're bored with the whole thing. You got to work. Now, the guy standing up in the back of the boat there is Mac McCoy. He's a fireman from Fairmont. And the guy up front running the trolling motor, this guy is Rick Heim. He has a recreational vehicle sales lot. This is Mac McCoy. Rick sells these things that run down the highway, the motor homes and also trailers and the pop-up kind of trailers that you trailer behind your boat and everything, but recreational vehicles. This is Bernie Dowler from Charleston and Bob Ross here. And they're both, as I say, with the Department of Natural Resources, which does, I think, a super job in West Virginia. Those guys, they have horrendous water pollution problems up there that they've worked with, and they've gotten legislation to pass and everything like that. But now here we are. This is, in normal water levels, what you're seeing would be 50 feet deep. You can imagine in the summertime, a big old smallmouth bass cruising along right on top of this table that you see up here. But to me, it's a spectacular lake, the cliffs and everything, because this once was the Gauley River Canyon. And they fill it up full of water. As I say, they dammed it up. And sometimes it's full of water. But generally, early in the spring, you catch it down like this. But still great scenery. One of the prettier lakes that I get a chance to go to. It's a good walleye lake and a good smallmouth bass lake. There's a dead tree that when the lake is full, that tree's underwater. And it's sticking out up there on top of that cliff. But certainly choice spots for fish to hang out. This is a smallmouth bass. And we're bumping the bottom, jigging up and down with a spoon kind of a lure that I'm going to be able to show you here a little bit later. But that's a nice plump little smallmouth, healthy fish, extremely healthy. My favorite fish of all. I love to catch all species, but if somebody says you'll never be able to catch any other fish but one the rest of your life, pick one, I'd have to go for the smallmouth. This one I would go for eating. That's the walleye. And Mac's got the touch for it. You got to have a touch when you're a walleye fisherman. You got to know how to jig, how to look at your line and tell when you've had a hit. And we went up in the river, all the way up in the Gauley River. We finally found the walleyes, and they were up in there on the spawning run. We didn't find them in the deep holes where we thought we might and where you often do. They had already moved up into the river. But that was a nice walleye that he had there. There's a size limit in West Virginia, and they were keeping the walleyes that are above the size limit that were keepers. You don't throw them back. They're too good to eat. Smallmouth are very good to eat, too. It's a delicious eating fish. But the guys like to catch them. It's a very sporting fish, and so they throw it back. But at the same time, they don't throw back the walleyes. And that's a little bass, and he'll go back. But you find them together quite often. It was an overcast kind of a day, a cloudy kind of day. The sun was in and out, as you can see here. And it was kind of cold. It was raw. It wasn't raining, but those rain jackets made good windbreakers. I like to go up there. I like West Virginia very much. Never spent any time up there until about 3 years ago when we added it to Southern Sportsman territory. Didn't know anybody. Denzel was the first guy that I met up there. I called the Department of Natural Resources, and I said, how about connecting me up with some guy up there that knows what's going on hunting and fishing-wise and can help? And they said, we got just the guy for you. Get a hold of Denzel Courtney in Fairmont, West Virginia. And I did, and he and I have been firm friends ever since, and have spent a lot of time together. That one, that walleye there is going into the bucket. Somebody's going to eat him because walleyes are a choice eating fish. This is the thing that we were using. It's kind of it's called a sonic. lure. This is a copy of it, a facsimile of it, and you tie your line right here and you jig it up and down in the water, and it has a fluttering motion as it wobbles up and down. It attracts the fish's eye. It's got a lot of lead up here. It drops right fast, and sometimes you're working 30, 40, even 50 feet down in some of these lakes. You can see there that torpedo shape. There's a pretty nice little gob of lead up there, and that takes it down right fast. But that's one of the favorites. They use other spoons and lures up there too, but that's one of the favorite lures that we use up there on walleyes. I'll be back here in a minute. We're going to look at a fish that I call a croaker. I don't even call it a perch, and it's really not a perch. It's a drum, and it's one of the few freshwater drums, and they catch it in the Ohio River in the summertime, and I'm going to take you up there and show you that fish that I call a freshwater croaker in just a minute after these very important messages. The folks at House Archery Mills get a lot of letters from you about their fine products, but some have written to say their store doesn't carry House Archery products. Well, if you want to try House Archery products like these, you have to ask your store manager to stock them. Copy this address and give it to your store manager. Tell him you want to try House Archery cornmeal, flour, and their special mixes. House Archery Mills will be happy to serve your grocer and you with the finest products at a fair price. House Archery Mills, Newton Grove, North Carolina.
Sneaky Snake, the live-action salt flavor worm, is the hottest bass-busting lure on the market. The folks at Seeker Lure make you this fantastic get-acquainted offer. We'll send you an assortment of 60 Sneaky Snakes, and 140 tournament-tested worms, and 100 red-hot crappie jigs, and 40 frog trailers, and 20 of the newest in lures, the Shining Shad, for the unbelievable low price of $23.95. That's a $60 value for $23.95. Call toll-free, or send your check or money order to Sneaky Snake, Post Office Box 710, Mountain Home, North Carolina, 28758.
What's so different about the Happy Jack 3X flea collar? It works. Manufacturers of animal health products for over 38 years, Happy Jack has achieved a dramatic breakthrough in canine preventive health care. The Happy Jack 3X flea collar contains a completely new active ingredient which kills fleas for 11 months, ticks for 7 months, and mange mites. Protect your dog and home year-round with the Happy Jack 3X collar. Save an expensive trip to the animal clinic and a costly visit from the exterminator. Ask for Happy Jack. Your dog would. In my hometown of Greenville, North Carolina, there's a place called Overton's. Overton's is the world's largest water sports dealer, and this is their 1985 discount catalog. Anything and everything that the boater will need is in this book. Whether it's water skis or life vests, fishing tackles, shotguns, or crossbows, Overton's in Greenville has it at discount prices. Call them today toll-free for your new free catalog, or stop by when you're in Greenville. The prices and selections are super. Tell them Frank sent you. My breakfast trout Parmesan should be about ready for the next step in cooking the recipe. As I say, you have to do this in a couple of stages, but it's not complicated at all. And if you fix something like this, you know, if you have some guests over, 5 or 6 people or something like that, and there's going to be a sporting event that day or something, and you invite them over for a Sunday brunch or a brunch any other time and serve them this, they'll be very impressed. Now, I have cooked this about 10 or 12 minutes. You just want to be sure and never overcook the fish. And I'll take some asparagus and just sort of frame the side of the metal plate here. It's very hot, remember, it's been in the oven. Take an egg, 1 egg per person, and pour it in the little place that you have made there, like this. Sprinkle some more Parmesan on it. Now you can come back later. You've salt and peppered the fish, and you can come back later and salt and pepper the other. It's now ready to go back into the oven. Let me get the door open before I go with this two-handed hot little metal plate here. And we're going to put it back and cook it about 5 more minutes, 5 or 6 or something like that, until that egg is baked. And you sort of time your egg. I mean, the recipe calls for 5 minutes, and that's going to give you a firm egg. If you want one harder than that, you leave it in there a minute or 2 longer. I'm going to go back and get it there in just a minute and show you what it looks like. But in the meantime, there's a fish that until a couple of years ago when I went up to West Virginia in the summertime, that I had never heard of, never seen, never heard of, never had even run across it in literature. And Denzel says, we're going to go white perch fishing. And I said, oh, I know what that is. We've got white perch down in North Carolina. They grow down there, and we catch them in our brackish water and in our saltwater sounds and places like that. And he said, no, this is strictly a freshwater fish, and it's a member of the drum family. And I said, how can you call it a perch? And he said, well, we call it white perch up here. It's like, you know, why do you call a black bass when it's really not a bass, it's a sunfish? And he said, we call them a perch up here, but it belongs to the drum family, and it's one of only a couple of freshwater drums that I know. There's a fish called the buffalo, which gets quite big. Now, this white drum in the Ohio River, it is a white perch, and I call it a white drum. I also call it a freshwater croaker, because when you see it, it looks more like a croaker than any fish I've ever seen. But it runs up in the summertime under these dams, the small ones. Now, this fish gets to 15, 18, and 20 pounds, but in the summertime when they run up under the dam, they're smaller than that. They're like 1.25 pounds, 1.5 pounds, on up to 2. Sometimes you get 2.5 or 3 pound. But they run up under these dams that are big locks on the Ohio River, and they're forced to stop there. And this is one of the dams that you're seeing here. This one is at Ravenwood in West Virginia on the Ohio. And what you're seeing over there across the river is a lock that they put these big boats in, boats 900 and 1,000 feet long. I say boats, tugboats with barges ahead of them. I've seen them up there where they would be 5 barges long and 3 barges wide. One tugboat would be pushing 15 of these absolutely enormous barges hauling coal and grain and everything else that they haul on the Ohio River. But there's fresh, aerated, oxygenated water under the dam, and that's where these guys congregate to catch this fish right here that I call the freshwater croaker. It looks very, very similar to the saltwater croaker that we have in our sounds down in Carolina. And the reason is they both belong to the same family. They're both drum. They have that odd flat mouth right down at the bottom, no chin. The mouth's right down at the bottom of their nose. And it's designed for them to feed because they're bottom feeders. And you find that in the channel bass, in the whiting, or the so-called Virginia mullet or sea mullet, in the black drum, the croaker, the spot. They're all drum. They all belong to the drum family. And when I saw this fish, I said, that's not a thing in the world but a croaker. And they said, well, up here we call them white perch. But they're good sport fish. Now, they catch them on spoons. And I was down there that day with Bernie Dowler, that you've already seen, and with Denzel. They carried me down there when I heard about this fish. And they were using artificial spoons. But a lot of these guys use bait. You can catch them either way. When you fish artificials around this riprap and this rocks, and you fish them right down along the bottom, you lose a lot of spoons. But that's where a lot of guys like to fish for them. They do get hung up. But a good, tough, hard-fighting fish. And I never saw a fish that looked more like a croaker, not to be a croaker, than that fish right there. You also catch catfish. You got a glimpse of a catfish. This is Bernie Dowler, who is the chief of the Warm Water Fisheries Division of the Department of Natural Resources in the lovely state of West Virginia, the mountain state. And I love to go up there, and in fact, I'm going back next week, try for some trout, a few things like that. But a lot of sportsmen in that state, and a lot for them to do. A lot of fishing, a lot of hunting, and one of my favorite places to visit. Coal mining country, and chemicals, and steel. The mighty Ohio River has been brought back considerably. It used to be much, much more polluted than this. It's not a pristine mountain stream by any stretch of the imagination. There's still quite a bit of pollution in it, but they have cleaned it up remarkably, and states on both sides of the Ohio have been cooperating in doing that, but nobody, I think, has done more to clean up their streams and lakes than the people in West Virginia. There's the subject right there. Looks just like a croaker. Member of the drum family that they call a white perch up in that part of the country. but that's the typical drum mouth that you see there. Designed, Mother Nature gave them that so they can feed on the bottom. They just cruise along and look for stuff right down under their nose to pick up and eat. In the surf, the Outer Banks and all along our coast, the red drum, the whiting, the spot, they all come in and they root along in the sand and catch the little crabs and that sort of things. I guess these fish up there eat crawfish and things like that grow on the bottom. But it's a freshwater fish. As I say, West Virginia has had some horrendous problems. They've done a better job of cleaning up, I guess, because they had worse problems. But they have done a great deal up there, and I hope the new philosophy and the new changes about the environment and giving industry preference and that sort of stuff won't set back what they're doing up there, because they're cleaning up a lot of rivers that 10 years ago had no fish at all and now have a great many. I'll be back here in a minute. We'll check our recipe and I'll have a final word after this. One of our most popular dishes at the Southern Sportsman is the sweet and sour duck, a special recipe. The same goes for our frog legs. We cook them different. And Frank's fried shrimp, marinated in cognac, fried in a beer batter, served with a special sauce. Wow, you could say that about all 25 of our recipes on the Southern Sportsman menu. Our most frequent complaint is that we don't charge enough. Well, we put out the best game and seafood we can at the Southern Sportsman at a fair profit. If you don't think you've paid enough, fine. Give the rest to your favorite charity with our compliments.
During August, 76 boys and girls from the Columbia area will travel to Montclair, New Jersey to compete in the annual United States Youth Games. These youngsters aged 9 to 15 will compete in Olympic-type competition with youth from 14 other cities. Competition includes basketball, bowling, swimming, tennis, and track and field events. I'm Harry Davis, Commissioner of the Department of Youth Services. On behalf of our community's youth, I'm seeking your support for the Columbia team's participation in the National Youth Games. Through our contributions and support, we can give the opportunity to each of these youngsters to compete and become winners. Your contributions may be sent to the Youth Games Committee in care of the St. Luke Center in Columbia. Your support will make a difference. Thank you.
This is sealed, it's private, and it's personal between the president and me.
I demand to know the contents of that letter.
And I say it's between Nixon and me.
President Nixon.
What's wrong with playing Nixon? Look in the paper. They do it all the time. Nixon this, Nixon that.
That's their business, but in this house we show the proper respect. You don't like President Nixon, you call him Mr. Nixon.
Or Tricky Dicky.
Well, if our breakfast trout Parmesan's not done now, it ain't ever gonna be done. And it looks just right, just perfect, like I like the egg. It's still got a little moisture in the yellow. Close that back up. And now is the time that we can slide it into the holder and bring it to the table and serve it. You can cook this 4 in a big broiler pan or 6 or however many and set it up like this and do it and then take it out with a spatula if you want to do it all at one time. But I like these little individual serving plates. I can eat this for lunch, and I can eat it for supper. I can eat it especially for a late-night supper. But it's basically, I think, a brunch. It's one of my favorite recipes, and I serve it quite often when people come over. That trout, incidentally, was caught yesterday down at Wallace Channel, and we flew down there in the airplane and caught a bunch of them, and we're going to bring you that story in just a couple of weeks. Until then, please do not litter, and do yourself a favor. Take a kid fishing.
The Southern Sportsman has been brought to you in part by House Autry Cornmeal and Flour Products, by Happy Jack,